all of you for joining us today. And please keep in mind that this session will be recorded, okay? So, Irene, thank you so much for joining us today. Irene, I know everyone here is aware who Irene is, but Irene has over 25 years of experience in public and private sectors and profit and non-profit organizations across the UK and Europe. Her work focuses on technological innovation, fostering ecosystems, and using technology to address business and social challenges. She has been involved in collaborative R&D, incubation, acceleration, economic intervention programs, entrepreneurship, and international private and impact investment. She is part of a global movement promoting a transition to a more sustainable economic system known as the next economy. Please, let's give her a warm welcome. Please keep in mind that this session will be recorded, of course. And from our side, this is it. Irene, welcome, and the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jorge, for the introduction. It's all right, it's all correct, but it depends on how you tell the story. First of all, I want to say that I'm really glad that you all joined today, and I hope many people see this talk in the coming months, because as I've posted on my social media profiles, I'm going to put my heart and I'm going to open myself in this talk, and that's not something that I usually do, definitely not in public, and to be recorded. I want to tell you a little bit about my journey around the next economy and how I came to do the work that I've done for the last 5 years. I've written a little bit about that on the posts that are published in the Next Generation Internet forum. So you can read there some of my inspirations and some of the things that I care about. But I think it's important to understand how I came to this, because this is a journey. And it's not just a journey for me, it's a journey for many people that I've met, for the last 5-6 years. Some of them I work with today, and some of them have moved to other areas. But we all believe that we need to build a better world, and that we need to do something about it. Our problem is how. And so many years ago, I started to think why I was so collaborative, and I was only facing pain really in my workplaces, and I was kept on telling, oh, you need to be tougher and you need to be more man-like, and you need to show that you are brave and strong, and you're always you are right, and then you know what you're doing. And somehow I was thinking that this is not really the way I want to work, and this is not definitely what I stand for. And I started to look for things in a very serendipitous way. I just kept myself open, and I kept myself just aware of what was going on around me. And at that time, I was very deeply involved and I'm still are in the digital space and in the Web3 space. And I started to meet people that had a passion for new technologies, and also a passion for building a better world. And talking to many of them, I started to see that there were different ways of doing things, that there were people and there were groups around the world that were doing things in a much more interesting, I found, and more fair. And I thought, well, I want to explore this. So I embarked on a journey of discovery and practicing. Everything that I'm going to tell you today comes from practice. Of course, I've read, I've talked to people, but it's really what I've lived and gone through personally that is interesting, because you can read many things on governance, you can read many things on value creation, you can read many things on how to build companies and how to build new companies, and you can read a lot about visions. But really, when it comes to living it. And by living it, I mean living it and working it and practice it every day. That's where you face the challenges and the problems and the difficulties. And that's something that I also want to share with you. We tend to celebrate successes or perceived successes, and that's fine. But it's very important to talk about the risk taking and the pain that you go through when you embark on this type of journeys. I have to say that I'm a very curious person, and many people have asked me, friends of mine, how come that you get always involved with really weird stuff, things that are not normal, and that's a question that puzzles me, because what is normal anyway. So I started also questioning, what is normal? Why do we live in societies that don't prize humanity? Why do we need to depend on every single thing for money and other alternatives around there? So it's been a personal journey and a professional journey with a lot of risk and a lot of pain, but also with what I perceive as really interesting insights on how our economies work and how our workplaces work, and the role of technology in all this landscape. So I'm going to share with you some ideas and some experiences around 5 areas of thought and practice. So the first one that I think is important to reflect on, and again, I'm going to say it again, this comes from practice. It's not something that is something that I've learned, I've read about, but that I've seen and I've touched and I've implemented in my previous collectives. And the first reflection is around value creation, and what do we perceive as valuable in our societies, in our day-to-day interactions, and in our workplaces. And you can read a lot of work around this topic from the latest generation of economists, people that operate under the commons global movement. What is value, how it's created, and what can we do to change the way we look at value creation. And I'm talking about money, I'm talking about financial gain. We tend to see our economies and our workplaces, and in general, our relationships, some sort of interactions that are based on this particular value exchange, which is money. It's transactional. It's very transactional, and it's not only money. It's that way. There's like, give you something, you give me something, and we seem to have forgotten ways of operating and creating value that are more close to what humans do, which is basically collaborate for survival. And reading through, the latest thinkers around this, I started to see clear that my problem was that I thought money was the most important thing ever for my future survival, for my well-being, for how I raised my family, and how I interacted with the world, basically. I had a brain, I put that brain to work, other people paid me, and I was fine with that, without questioning, is my work really creating an impact on society? Is it useful in some way? Which is what I believe. I believe I need to put my effort towards building something that is worthwhile and that makes an impact, even if it's a hyper-local impact, something very close to me. So that was the first step of my journey. How can I create value in ways that are not just purely economic? Can I make environmental impact? Can I have a knowledge information exchange impact, knowledge creation, knowledge sharing impact? Can I do something that can be measured in ways that can be put forward and see, there is value created here, and make it tangible? And in this value creation equation, I started to see how important care and care practices are, within groups, and in how little I knew about care practices and how little I knew about how important they were, because that is something that I tend to do with my workmates and my colleagues. I don't believe that there has to be some reciprocity in the workplace in terms of caring for the people around me. And I'm not just talking about, listening to people when they don't have a good day. It's also making life easier for those around me by, doing things in very clear ways, communication, for example. So that was the first step of my journey, changing the way I looked at value creation and starting to look for ways that where I could put that in practice, but also make it more tangible. And then I found that it was so hard to unlearn my ways of thinking and my ways of operating. I started to realize that having been raised in a hyper-capitalist society where money is king and looking after yourself is the first most important thing, I found that trying to operate in environments where there were other ways of looking at value creation and making an impact and looking after each other, it didn't come naturally to me, because I still saw workplaces as very transactional and very individualistic. Nobody's going to cover me or cover my back. I'm going to have to fence for myself. And this, that might sound very simple to you. It's a massive barrier. It's a massive barrier. I found this something very difficult to change, and I'm talking about not value creation, but the values that I hold, what I have been taught, since I was a little girl, which I'm not anymore, and how difficult it is to cultivate proactively values of just curiosity and openness, emotional connection, gratitude, compassion, and seeing the others as part of your own life and not as something that is completely isolated. And this was, and it still is, it's something very, very difficult to say undone, because becoming aware of the dynamics that pervade our societies and economies and our workplaces particularly, and identify where things are destructive and destructive and toxic, and trying to intervene and do something about it, often leaves one single person very lonely and isolated and actually cast aside. Basically, we are not geared or educated to be collaborative and operate on the common principles. And that is something that we definitely need to change. Decisions need to be made at the individual level to move forward, realize that that's not the way that you want to operate, and then trying to move to the next stage. But it's a tough journey, and I would say the toughest journey, because it's a personal journey. One cannot operate in workplaces that prioritize commons, communality, conviviality, and care if you don't drop past beliefs. And that is strictly a personal journey. And once you start questioning that from the inside, and try to listen to your body and your being, you start to look at money in different ways too. Money in the terms that are put by Guerrilla Media Collective and Disco.com that I've been very close to and worked for many years, and still are. Money seen as livelihood is part of an equation where love work or impact work or pro bono work, work for the community, and care work, care for oneself and care for the group, and care for the wider ecosystem are made tangible and visible and are part of your daily practices in workplaces. Part of your daily practices, part of your business models. Not everybody agrees with these terminologies, but you get the picture, I hope. If you operate in a group with this lens, you look at livelihood, love, work, and care work, your day-to-day practices change, the way you do businesses change, the way you interact with each other changes, and it becomes a completely different journey. And I believe you can make money and have an impact and look after each other. But you need to be ready for that first at an individual level and then at a group level. This is not something that can be left to chance. In this specific point, I learned in my life, in my journey, I learned that governance was something very important. Governance practices in workplaces and governance in a very specific way. So in workplaces as the practices that help the group work together, set the boundaries of what you need to do and how you relate to each other, and provides the mechanisms to solve conflict when it arises or hopefully before it arises. And this was something that is very hard to practice, but it's something that thousands, millions of people globally are doing, are operating under commons principles, are coming together to solve a common problem that they all have. They have very explicit care practices that implement on a daily basis. And of course, they need to make money and have a sustainable lifestyle in terms of fair jobs, fair wages, and fair conditions. And fighting for that, I think it's possibly the most beautiful thing you can do, taking into account that one spends working most of our waking hours. So what is the best place ever to put in practice these ideas? I believe is the workplace. And then I started to think about entrepreneurship and how we look at entrepreneurship in our current societies. And as you are probably very well aware, because if you're here is because you are interested in the new ways of working, the future of work, and how technology and the next generation internet can help with that. You have to be, I think constructively critical of the current ecosystem of incubation, acceleration, and scaling of companies that at heart has a very a capitalist way of looking at working relationships, intellectual property, financial and investment opportunities, that is biased and rotten in many ways. There has been extensive research on this from many different points of view. My reflection is I think it's common sense. I mean, for me, it's clear that things are not being done in fair, open, trustworthy ways, and not prioritizing human relations. That's clear to me. The incentives are very twisted, and the results are there is a lot of pain, there is a lot of mental health issues, there are a lot of loss of jobs and loss of illusion and the will and desire to do things better, because unfortunately it kills a lot of that. But the question for me here is, what type of businesses do we need to face a world that is really getting, more and more difficult to live in by the minute? And I mentioned in one of the articles the poly crisis. We're facing multiple types of crises that are overlapping and our current systems cannot cope with that. So what we possibly need is to go back to basics. Some call it retro innovation, and go back to small groups of people that self-organize and find common purposes to operate and to move forward. And the fact is that we need to build regenerative businesses and businesses that care about the environment and care about people and care about making things, taking things in the right direction, whatever that right direction is, depending on the area of work. But we need to build a new reality that is fairer for all, that gives more opportunities, and that where work is not a burden, but it's something that we do because we want and we enjoy, because we know it's got a purpose, and we know we are doing something for the common good. Which takes me to the NGI role and a call for action. The NGI as an infrastructure, and everybody that is listening to this understands what the NGI stands for, how it was born, the ideals that it had many years ago. Actually, this initiative has been running for a fair amount of time and was cooked up by people that had really, well, I would say they dared to dream that technologies could be open and could support the development of trustworthy environments, and you can build places where people felt safe because their data and the way they were treated was fair and transparent and private. And I started researching combinations of technology developments, digital technology developments that could support that. Collaborative platforms, collaborative environments for sharing information, all the role of DLTs and blockchain in this building trustworthy environments. My take here, after having been working with many different groups in this space, is that in the end, the most important thing, the quality or the practices that bring people together are care practices. Our care is the glue of workplaces. And when care is gone and conflict arises, that's when the massive threats appear. And we are used to dealing with conflict in a very hierarchical way. We are very used to command and control, and just like tap the fire, and not thinking that it will emerge somewhere else, because the basic human needs are not covered, like respect for each other and taking people into account and dealing with conflict in an open way. The role of NGI here is to provide those safe spaces for collaboration and to provide the tools to be able for these new workplaces to run themselves. When one works on a self-organized environment, self-organization, it's difficult, it's very difficult. And there is this, one of the main challenges is that if you are your own boss, everybody is their own boss. Who is the boss? Because we still operate under that boss mentality. So these technologies can help to make visible the contributions that each person can bring to the workplace in terms of livelihood, love, impact, and care practices, and keep a balance between them, because you need to keep a balance on them, and you need to make them visible, and you need to make them measurable, if you want. We need to be able to prove that this type of activities have an impact and an effective, tangible impact. And that is something that the NGI can do. Now, to the role of the authorities, public authorities at all levels, in international organizations, and can do, it's to acknowledge that the world is changing, that there is something we can do to move our collective mindset beyond profit and beyond growth, and we can move forward and build together a better reality. And I'm talking about measures that can be put in place by public administrations to support the emergence of these workplaces. And I'm not just talking about changing the current landscape of incubation and acceleration, which is also something that needs to be looked at. It's how do you encourage that individuals take that journey that I was discussing at the beginning and start thinking that there are new ways, there can be other ways of operating. And learning them, that is difficult. How do you encourage young people to create businesses and teach them, show them the way to do things in a different way? Well, there are no role models, so there are very few successful role models that can take these type of practices forward. So increasing the visibility of these practices and the successful results, and there are many, can be something that public authorities at all levels can take, encouraging specifically this type of businesses to provide local services and provide international services. Why not? One last point I want to make this emphasis that we need to build the next economy, and we need to build the next society, our next society, and we need to do it using technologies that uphold the values of the NGI, but that have definitely people and humanity at the center. And that's it for me. I think this was reasonably short, but I'm very curious to see what you have put in the chat. If you have put some comments in the chat, and maybe we can have a conversation about this. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Any questions, please? I can see Sari Escribano here. She works with me. We work together in Community Parlor. So we are working with communities in taking some of these ideas forward and helping self-organized groups to look at their practices with a care lens. Oh, Melanie is here as well. Hi, Melanie. Well, I don't know if it was thoughtful, but I definitely wanted to put these topics under a different light, and the way we think around workplaces need to change, and the role we place on technology needs to change too. I can see Mikkel also writing. Hi, Mikkel. Mikkel and a colleague Andreas and I also work in a group called Sports, and we are doing some work around governance and investment and the legal issues, and thinking about these topics very carefully and implementing them with scale-ups. Nonprofit Ventures is here to assist with this kind of startup incubation. I know Melanie. Melanie is, thank you, Melanie, for coming. Yes. Melanie is fronting the Post-Growth Entrepreneurship Initiative, and she's doing amazing work. I'm a big fan. Thank you for coming, really. Mikkel, can this care work be given a value that helps managers justify this area of neglected this for? Yes, it can. It can be measured, and it can be accounted for, and it can be done in different ways. I mean, the Guerrilla Media Collective, for example, and Sari Escribano is here, and she's a member of the collective too, could say more, but it's measured through hours of work spent on translation, for example. And the hours of work spent on translation go towards both livelihood, but also to the type of love work they've chosen to do, which is translating pieces of work that are actually too radical to be translated into mainstream languages like English or Spanish, and they make this great job of translating, picking specific pieces of work and translating them into these languages. They've been doing that for 10 years. This is the 11th year of being alive and kicking, and they are an example of all the things that I've been discussing today, and an inspiration. There was a before and after since I met Sari and the Guerrilla Media Collective team. More questions? I encourage you to think about this. It would be a success for me, talking about measurements, to have you all thinking about this and then see what you come up with, because this is sort of like a lens. You can see reality through. You can choose that. You choose how you look at reality. And a piece of warning or a word of warning, sometimes it's very painful to look at reality through this lens, because you will start seeing inequalities everywhere. And it's very frustrating to see how you cannot solve all the problems of the world. But we can start small and look around and get together with people that care about the same things that you do and move forward. Any more questions? Mikel says, I cannot imagine a manager trying to convince her company that a more sustainable approach, a bit more expensive, may be a better practice, but today is very prevalent. Similarly, today will be difficult to include this topic in the business agendas unless governments and institutions buy it and take steps towards its implementation. I completely agree, Mikel, but it's not only governments. Governments need to support, but there needs to be a minds and hearts change in our societies. I mean, from an early age, we are teaching our kids to prioritize individualistic, economic-driven behavior. That's what we incentivize. What can we expect when people reach their 20s, early 20s? What do they want to do? And I think that younger generations have a much more appreciation of the state of the world and the impact that they can have with their actions. But I also see, at least around me, a lot of disillusionment and discontent. It's like, I can live off my parents, until I reach, my middle ages. So why should I, bother and to fight and change things as they are? And that is a massive problem, very difficult to solve. Jorge, you are typing. Okay, thank you very much, Jorge. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, Mikel. The work-life balance is a lot more important for everybody now. You know what it means in terms of in when it becomes to executing it. In many cases there is flexibility, but there is a lot more pressure on your lives. I mean, I've seen that around. I've lived that. I've lived through that. There is no true work and life balance, I believe, in our workplaces today, or at least in very few workplaces. I hope so, Mikel, I hope so. Well, I suppose if there are no more questions, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you can think and reflect about these issues. And yeah, ping me anytime if you want to have a chat about this. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye. Thank you. Talk again soon. Thank you.